They asked, "Where's the mother?" And all they got was silence. Tonight, an explosive development shakes the already fragile foundation of the Sussex narrative. Multiple elite private and state schools have rejected Archie Harrison's enrollment, not because of grades or fees, but due to what they call a legally troubling birth certificate. Shockingly, Meghan Markle is not listed as his biological mother. Instead, an unnamed legal guardian or agency appears in her place. Schools flagged it as a red flag. Legal experts are stunned. Is this a clerical error, or a cover-up that could change everything we know about Archie and the royal line itself? Stay with us as we unpack the sealed documents, insider leaks, and unravel the silent scandal no one saw coming. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It started with a whisper. An odd phone call to a Los Angeles preparatory school's admission office that didn't sit right with the registrar. A royal name. An application under the name Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. A prestigious surname with global weight, yet something about it triggered a quiet unease. It wasn't the child's background, the title, or the celebrity connection. It was the document that accompanied the file. A birth certificate that, by all expectations, should have been perfectly straightforward. But instead, it raised more questions than it answered. There, under the section typically reserved for the mother's legal identity, the name Meghan Markle was noticeably absent. In her place was a vague designation that read, Legal Guardian Private Agency. There was no name, no signature, no hospital seal that matched typical British or American standards. No reference to a biological mother. Just a bureaucratic hole where identity and legitimacy were supposed to sit. The admissions officer initially thought it was a technical error, perhaps a clerical mistake or redaction. But then came a second school, then a third, then a state-run institution, all with the same experience. Different registrars, different offices, same odd documentation. And not one of them could verify the custodial status of the child in question. It wasn't long before whispers turned into concern, and concern spilled into action. Quiet emails were sent. Phone calls were made to higher-ups. And in one extraordinary breach, a digital copy of the certificate was leaked online, anonymous, blurry, but unmistakably odd. What followed has since spiraled into one of the most mysterious controversies ever to hover around the royal orbit. Prince Harry, once the beloved younger son of Princess Diana and now a self-exiled figure entangled in lawsuits and brand deals, was thrust back into the spotlight. Not for a public spat with the firm or a Netflix documentary, but for the very legitimacy of his own child. Archie Harrison, the firstborn son of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, has become the center of a legal and ethical storm that no one in the Royal Communications Office could have predicted or controlled. In this investigation, we'll unpack the shocking details, how private and state institutions began flagging Archie's documentation, what makes the birth certificate legally questionable, and why Meghan Markle's name appears to be deliberately omitted from a legal document that should be crystal clear. More importantly, we'll examine the implications of this mystery on the child, the monarchy, and the public's trust in everything we've been told about the Sussex children. But first, let's pull back and understand why this matters. In most cases, the birth certificate of a royal child is a matter of public record. Sealed in tradition, sometimes photographed by the press, and used as a statement of continuity in the royal lineage. From Queen Elizabeth II to Prince William's children, these records form not just personal identifiers but part of the public archive of constitutional monarchy. It's how legitimacy is proven. It's how succession is preserved. It's how the public believes what they're told. So when a child born into that ecosystem suddenly comes with vague paperwork, anonymous guardianship, and institutional rejection, it doesn't just raise an eyebrow, it threatens the very foundation of the narrative presented to millions around the world. The silence from the Sussex camp only adds to the confusion. Despite multiple press inquiries, neither Meghan nor Harry has offered a direct answer. Statements are rerouted through lawyers. Rumors are ignored. And yet the questions refuse to go away. What kind of birth certificate names a legal guardian but no biological parent? Was Meghan Markle ever legally listed as Archie's mother on any document? Was there a surrogate involved? Or worse, an adoption cloaked under layers of PR? The world has watched this family very closely for years. From Meghan's entrance into royal life to the explosive Oprah interview, every twist and turn has played out on the international stage. But this might be the most significant development yet, because it strikes not at image or scandal, but at truth and bloodline. And as history has shown, nothing is more sacred to the monarchy than legitimacy. Sources close to the royal household claim they're as confused as the public. One former aide, who spoke under anonymity, mentioned that even some inside the palace never met Archie. It was strange, the source said. The christening was closed off. Very few people held him. The Queen never seemed at ease with him, and Prince Philip, well, he never even mentioned the child. Such quotes have been dismissed as rumor, but when viewed through the lens of recent developments, they gain disturbing weight. Did the palace know something but choose to remain silent? Did they try to shield Harry and Meghan? Or did they attempt to distance themselves from something they could not endorse? Now, with school rejections piling up, that wall of silence is beginning to crack. The implications extend far beyond the UK. In the United States, where Archie was reportedly born, parental identity is a crucial legal requirement for everything from education to travel to inheritance. If Meghan Markle is not listed as the mother, how is custody legally defined? Who holds guardianship rights? Who consents to education, medical treatment, or public appearances? More disturbingly, if Archie is not legally recognized as her child, what does that mean for Lilibet Diana, the couple's second child? As the admissions offices scrambled to make sense of the document, and royal insiders began leaking private frustrations, the public started to ask the most uncomfortable question of all. Is Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor who we've been told he is? This isn't conspiracy for the sake of spectacle. This is a paper trail mystery with real-world consequences. Legal documents, institutional denials, silence from the parents, questions from journalists, confusion in 2 countries, and a growing divide between what we've seen and what is provable. In the sections that follow, we will piece together the full timeline, from Meghan's alleged pregnancy to Archie's birth announcement, to the strange christening ceremony, and finally, to the mounting rejections from schools across both the UK and the US. We'll show you expert commentary, leaked documentation, and contradictory statements from the couple themselves. And we'll let you decide what the truth really is. Because in the end, this isn't just a story about a boy and his school admission. It's about the fragility of public trust, the myth of transparency in royal institutions, and the shocking possibility that one of the most famous children in the world may not legally exist as the person we've all been told to believe in. This is not fiction. This is the storm quietly brewing behind the palace gates, and it's only just begun. It began in the unassuming admissions office of a well-established Los Angeles private school, a place that had educated the children of celebrities, politicians, tech moguls, and even foreign dignitaries. Their reputation rested on discretion, efficiency, and a rigorous background checking system. On a warm Monday morning, the application for a child named Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor slid into the school's encrypted portal. The name was instantly recognized. This wasn't just another high-profile enrollment, it was a member of the British royal family. At first glance, the application seemed in order. The child's age matched the public record. There was a U.S. residential address listed in the Beverly Hills area. Parental information had been entered, partially. Prince Harry's name appeared under father, with a UK passport number. But when the registrar reached the mother field, she froze. Instead of Meghan Markle, there was only the phrase, legal guardian confidential. No legal name, no identification document, no signature matching maternal rights. In the spot where the biological mother's name and details would traditionally appear, especially for a minor under 5 years of age, there was nothing but a wall of ambiguity. No hospital was named. No birth certificate number matched any California Department of Public Health records. No medical form accompanied the documentation. And most importantly, there was no maternal verification. The registrar, seasoned in dealing with celebrities and complex custody arrangements, initially assumed it was a misfile or a security redaction. It wasn't uncommon for high-profile parents to mask details, especially in Los Angeles. But when she submitted a routine request for verification, asking politely but formally for the missing legal information, she received a response that turned heads. Per legal counsel, documentation is sealed. Guardian is a third-party private entity. The email contained no official watermark. The name of the supposed agency was not included. The electronic signature was anonymized, with no traceable law firm or representative's identity. Within hours, that application was flagged and escalated to the school's Internal Risk Review Committee. And over the next 72 hours, 2 other schools, both in Southern California and both considered elite educational institutions, reported receiving eerily similar applications. One was from a state-level charter academy, the other from a bilingual international school popular with expat families. Each reported that the field for the biological mother's identity was redacted, missing, or obscured by generic legal terms. This wasn't an isolated error. This was a pattern. Administrators began talking behind closed doors. Legal counsel for the schools advised against proceeding with any enrollment that lacked verified documentation. One assistant headmaster noted, "We've handled dozens of cases involving adopted children, children of divorced parents, children under foster care. But never have we seen a certificate with no legal mother and no explanation beyond a legal shield." California law is clear about school enrollment requirements for minors. Public and private schools alike must verify parental or legal guardian identity. It is especially critical when the child is under legal age and when the admission process includes tuition contracts, medical releases, and emergency contact waivers. None of those boxes could be legally checked if a parent's legal name wasn't verified. By midweek, the issue had caught the attention of a private consulting firm specializing in educational placement for high-profile families. Known for its discretion, the firm was approached by a liaison reportedly tied to the Sussex Circle. They were asked to facilitate enrollment for Archie under non-traditional circumstances. But even the firm, used to shielding details for Hollywood and Silicon Valley elites, found itself at a loss. According to an anonymous consultant, "We deal with celebrity kids all the time. We're used to confidentiality." But this was a brick wall. There was no explanation, no access, not even a signed affidavit by the supposed mother. Just the claim that the child had a right to privacy under some sort of legal guardianship shield. That's not how education law works. Within days, the story began to seep out. Quietly at first. A tabloid in the UK hinted at difficulties with school enrollment for the royal children. An online forum that tracks inconsistencies in royal behavior posted a redacted image of what appeared to be part of Archie's application packet. It was blurry, but visible. The name Meghan Markle was nowhere in sight. Under Mother, the section simply read, "Third-party custodian." The public reaction was immediate. Some dismissed the leak as a fake. Others pointed to the growing pile of unusual behaviors surrounding the Sussex children. No clear hospital record of birth, no public viewing of the newborns, heavily edited photographs, and christening ceremonies that excluded extended royal family participation. Now, with school applications being rejected for missing documentation, the whispers were turning into something louder. Education administrators consulted the law. If a child presents with incomplete parental documentation, schools can reject the application on legal grounds. This is particularly important when the child may travel internationally, when both parents must sign waivers, or when vaccination records and health documentation need legal parental signatures. The admission denials didn't name Archie directly, but several internal emails and memos from one of the schools, which were eventually leaked to an investigative journalist, revealed the unease. One email read, "The applicant is associated with a high-profile family. Documentation cannot be verified. Legal guardian is untraceable. Proceed with denial." Another school issued a formal internal policy revision. In the event of applications submitted with incomplete or anonymized parental data, regardless of the applicant's public profile, the school shall reject the enrollment due to legal exposure and regulatory compliance concerns. Somewhere in the hills of Montecito, a firestorm was brewing. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had carefully curated a brand of modern parenthood, progressive, private, protected. Yet none of that could shield them from the hard line of institutional protocol. Schools were not bound by PR or press narratives. They needed documents. They needed signatures. And they needed to know who the legal parents were. But those answers, in Archie's case, were not coming. A British expat living in California, whose child attends one of the involved schools, commented to a local reporter under anonymity. "We were told a royal would be joining the school. Everyone was buzzing about it. But suddenly, the name vanished from the admission roster. No explanation. Just gone." What followed was a quiet ripple effect across the education community. Other schools began reviewing applications tied to high-profile figures. Suspicion fell on any student with vague or unusual paperwork. Some were denied preemptively. Others received gentle inquiries to revise their submissions. The Markle-Harry circle, once considered glamorously untouchable, was now being met with caution, skepticism, and legal barriers. The public schools, too, were affected. Inquiries to state-funded academies triggered similar scrutiny. state laws demanded verifiable parental identity. Without Meghan's legal name on the document, and without a clear explanation, public institutions followed private ones in their denials. The school district's legal department advised against making exceptions, even for royals. One former school board member who reviewed the leaked documents told reporters, "This wasn't bias. It wasn't about who the child's parents were. It was about legal compliance." There are no carve-outs for celebrity kids when it comes to identifying who is responsible for them. If the birth certificate lacks basic maternal data, that's a problem. For Meghan and Harry, this represented a new kind of scandal, one that couldn't be brushed aside with carefully worded statements or lawyered press releases. This wasn't about who said what in an interview, or whether the family did or didn't get along with the royals. This was about a child's identity, on paper, in law, and in the eyes of institutions that protect children's rights. There was no outcry from the Sussex team, no rebuttal, just a silence that echoed through the media channels like an unanswered question. And with every passing day, the curiosity only grew. What had once been whispered in fringe circles now stood as a central mystery. Who is legally listed as Archie Harrison's mother? And why has every attempt to verify it been met with redaction, silence, or rejection? That question, now hanging in the air like a slow-moving storm cloud, would begin to draw even more scrutiny in the weeks to come. But one thing had already become clear. Something about Archie's documentation didn't add up, and the schools had noticed. If the education system wouldn't play along with the narrative, what would come next? It was late on a Thursday night when the first image surfaced. Grainy, partially redacted, but explosive in its implications. Posted anonymously on a forum dedicated to royal family discussions, the image claimed to show a portion of Archie Harrison Mountbatten-Windsor's birth certificate. At first glance, many assumed it was just another fabricated document meant to stir up online attention. But this one was different. The formatting, font, and data structure matched the layout used by California's Department of Public Health. The serial number format aligned with other certificates issued in 2019 in Santa Barbara County. Even more striking, however, was what was missing rather than what was visible. The section labeled Mother, name before first marriage, was not filled in with the expected name Rachel Meghan Markle. Instead, it had been replaced with a nondescript entry, Guardian Entity, Private Registration. Below that was a reference to a legal firm known to handle confidentiality contracts for surrogate arrangements in California. There was no signature from Meghan Markle, no matching identification number, no hospital registration matching known records from the area's main birthing centers. The document didn't just raise eyebrows, it sent shockwaves through online investigative circles and eventually caught the attention of independent journalists. Within hours, the image was being dissected frame by legal analysts, royal historians, and digital forensic experts. A former county clerk from California, speaking under condition of anonymity, confirmed that the format was highly unusual, but technically plausible. If the birth was recorded under a specific clause reserved for adoptions or gestational surrogacy filings. Under this clause, the biological parent's name may be legally withheld and replaced with the name of the guardian or legal custodian at the request of a family court. That's when the floodgates opened. Alternative news platforms, YouTube investigative channels, and Twitter accounts with large followings began posting deep dives into the legality of such a document. Could a child as high-profile as Archie really be registered under a legal shell, with no biological mother listed? What would it take for the California Department of Public Health to approve such a registration without traditional parental data? Was it evidence of surrogate use, or something even more opaque? Alternative news platforms, YouTube investigative channels, and Twitter accounts with large followings began posting deep dives into the legality of such a document. Could a child as high-profile as Archie really be registered under a legal shell, with no biological mother listed? What would it take for the California Department of Public Health to approve such a registration without traditional parental data? Was it evidence of surrogate use, or something even more opaque? To understand the complexity of the situation, one has to first examine the regulations surrounding birth documentation in the United States, specifically in California, where Meghan and Harry were believed to be residing at the time of Archie's birth. California allows a form of legal birth registration for children born via surrogate. In such cases, the biological mother's name can be withheld under certain legal protections, especially when contracts have been drawn up to protect the identities of involved parties. However, even in those cases, at least one biological or intended parent must be declared on the certificate. Most commonly, it is the mother, unless a pre-birth order has legally reassigned maternal rights to another party. The document in question didn't follow that pattern. It contained no maternal name at all, just a private legal reference in the word custodian. For many, this suggested that a third party had assumed legal responsibility for Archie at birth, and that Meghan Markle had either not asserted parental rights or had deliberately opted out of being listed. That possibility set off a wave of speculation. One theory posited that Archie was born via surrogate, but that the couple had chosen not to reveal it due to the stigma it might attract from traditionalist royal watchers. Another theory suggested Meghan might not have been involved in the birth process at all, that she acted solely as a step-in maternal figure post-delivery, under a sealed guardianship contract. More extreme versions of the story proposed that the child presented to the public as Archie might not be biologically connected to either Meghan or Harry, but was instead adopted through private channels. The reaction from mainstream media was slow, initially. Most major outlets either ignored the leak or dismissed it as a baseless online rumor. But once former legal experts began validating portions of the image, the tone started to shift. A US-based investigative news blog published a comprehensive report breaking down the inconsistencies, citing obscure laws from the California Family Code and highlighting loopholes that could allow such documentation to be legally filed without maternal details. They also identified the law firm referenced in the redacted line of the birth certificate, a Beverly Hills-based practice that specializes in discreet high-profile surrogacy arrangements and legal guardianship filings. Digging deeper, the report linked this firm to past clients that included tech billionaires, celebrities with known fertility challenges, and political families concerned with privacy. One journalist noted, "It is not illegal, but it is uncommon, and almost always used to obscure or shield parental identity for contractual or reputational reasons." The connection between the firm and Meghan Markle was never officially confirmed, but digital sleuths found that Doria Ragland, Meghan's mother, had once served as a witness in a separate guardianship case handled by the same legal team. It was a tenuous link, but a link nonetheless. The leak also reignited scrutiny over Archie's birth announcement. When Archie was born, the couple made the unusual decision not to present him to the press immediately. Unlike William and Kate, who famously stepped outside the Lindo wing of St. Mary's Hospital with all three of their children just hours after birth, Meghan and Harry opted for a more private introduction. Only a select few images were released, and those were taken in Windsor Castle, days after the reported birth. No hospital room, no doctors, no midwives, no official photographer present. Critics had questioned that move at the time, calling it the beginning of the opacity era for the Sussexes. Now, with a questionable birth certificate in circulation, the decision seemed less like a plea for privacy and more like a calculated measure to hide something bigger. Another point of concern was the hospital name, or the absence of one. The leaked certificate had a section for place of birth left entirely blank. While this omission might be explained by legal filings for home births or alternative arrangements, it clashed with public statements made by royal representatives at the time. The public had been told Meghan gave birth in a hospital setting. Which hospital, however, was never clearly identified. Publicly accessible hospital logs in the area revealed no confirmed record of Meghan Markle being admitted during the week Archie was born. No photos were taken entering or leaving a facility. No staff members came forward. And now, with the certificate failing to list a hospital or attending physician, the uncertainty was no longer speculative, it was documented. Several independent legal scholars began speaking out. Professor Carla Benton, an expert in family law at UCLA, issued a cautious but pointed statement in a radio interview. If the leaked certificate is authentic, and if it omits biological parentage, that would place the child's legal standing in a gray zone, especially if that child were to make claims on citizenship, education rights, or inheritance. It would also raise questions about the transparency of the legal filings that authorized such a document in the first place. The British media, always hungry for royal scandal, finally picked up the story. One tabloid ran with the headline, "Who is Archie's mother?" while another splashed, "Meghan's name vanishes from birth records." Morning talk shows began debating the legality, the optics, and the ethical implications. Some hosts defended the Sussexes, arguing that the modern family structure didn't require transparency on every detail. Others argued that when public funds and royal titles were involved, the public had a right to know who was and wasn't part of the lineage. Meanwhile, the silence from the Sussexes remained deafening. No denial. No correction. No legal cease and desist against the platforms sharing the image. The document's continued existence online, unchallenged, was seen by many as an indirect acknowledgement of its authenticity. The leak also reignited a debate within the UK Parliament about the legal status of children born abroad to royals. If Archie's birth certificate does not meet the standard for royal succession, could it be grounds for stripping the child of any claim to titles or privileges? Could it affect his security entitlements, his education rights, or even his citizenship? British MPs began quietly requesting briefings from constitutional experts on the matter. Some demanded clarity from the Home Office on whether they had verified the child's birth documentation when titles were bestowed. The royal family itself issued no formal statement, but behind the scenes, rumblings suggested concern. One courtier reportedly said, "If there's anything false or withheld about a child in the line of succession, it becomes more than a family issue. It becomes a constitutional issue." The leak, which many believed would die out as just another tabloid stunt, had now reached the highest levels of government scrutiny. And yet, at the center of it all, was a child who had never spoken a word publicly, never appeared unscripted before the press, and never been confirmed through transparent documentation to be biologically tied to the woman universally assumed to be his mother. A birth certificate is not just paper. It is proof, a declaration of identity, rights, and existence. Without it, the public only has trust. But what happens when trust begins to collapse? This question lingered like a heavy cloud over both continents. Meghan's silence now spoke volumes. Harry's legal actions against the press seemed hollow when the most pressing story went unanswered. And institutions. Schools, agencies, government offices continued to encounter roadblocks when trying to confirm basic information. The birth certificate leak wasn't just a story. It was a revelation. One that exposed the gap between narrative and documentation, between belief and proof, between appearance and legal fact. From the moment Meghan Markle's pregnancy with Archie was announced, the narrative seemed carefully controlled, curated to portray a modern royal couple embracing parenthood with grace and privacy. Yet beneath that polished surface, inconsistencies began to emerge, small at first, then increasingly difficult to ignore. What began as whispers about the size and movement of her baby bump grew into a full-blown internet investigation. As time passed, the puzzle pieces failed to align, and now, with the leaked birth certificate drawing scrutiny, it's no longer just idle speculation, it's a deeply troubling mystery. The official announcement of Meghan's pregnancy came on October 15, 2018, during a royal tour of Australia. The timing raised some eyebrows, particularly as the couple had just landed in Sydney and were scheduled for a highly publicized series of appearances. Observers noted how the announcement conveniently overshadowed other royal news circulating at the time. It was a public relations masterstroke, Harry and Meghan once again in the headlines, this time as joyful expectant parents. But from that moment forward, the pregnancy played out unusually. Unlike other royals, Meghan did not publicly disclose the expected due date. Kensington Palace offered vague timeframes like spring of 2019, without ever confirming the location or provider of her prenatal care. She declined to use the traditional Lindo wing, a hospital famously associated with royal births for generations. Neither press nor public were ever given confirmation about the obstetricians overseeing the pregnancy. There were no scheduled media updates, no glimpses of sonograms, no shared hospital protocols. Everything remained under tight wraps. Still, royal pregnancies have long drawn public interest. What made Meghan's different and suspicious to some were the physical discrepancies noted across several public appearances. From January through April 2019, Meghan's baby bump appeared to fluctuate dramatically. At one event, she was photographed squatting effortlessly in high heels, cradling a seemingly large bump. Days later, the bump seemed smaller, even repositioned. At a different event, it appeared to shift unnaturally in shape and placement as she walked. Videos circulated online showing her bump moving in ways that many said didn't align with the known characteristics of a late-stage pregnancy. Observers, including fashion commentators and medical professionals posting anonymously, began questioning the consistency of her maternity wardrobe. Unlike Kate Middleton, whose tailored maternity dresses subtly followed her progression with each trimester. Meghan's wardrobe was often oversized, draped in a way that obscured natural curvature. On multiple occasions, she wore coats buttoned strategically at the top, leaving the belly region hidden beneath layers of fabric. Social media accounts began cataloging every bump photo, comparing timelines, tracking inconsistencies. Independent vloggers posted frame-by-frame breakdowns of Meghan's walk, bend, and posture. Some even claimed to observe a visible collapse or folding of the bump, suggesting the use of prosthetics. Though easily dismissed as conspiracy fodder, these videos gained millions of views and ignited ongoing debates. The palace's reaction to all of this? Silence. Not once did they attempt to dispel the growing narrative. No formal statement. No medical confirmation. Not even an off-the-record leak to calm the rumors. The silence only fed the flames. Compounding the confusion was the nature of Meghan's public engagement schedule. Unlike traditional royal mothers-to-be, she continued attending lengthy events deep into her supposed third trimester. In March 2019, just weeks before Archie was reportedly born, Meghan traveled extensively, including a highly publicized baby shower in New York City. Eyewitness accounts from the shower describe her as energetic, agile, and seemingly unaffected by late-stage pregnancy symptoms. One attendee reportedly said, "She was glowing, sure, but I wouldn't have guessed she was about to give birth in less than 2 months. She moved like someone in the second trimester at most." The shower itself raised questions too. It was hosted at the Markle Hotel, known for high-level security and exclusivity. Despite intense media interest, not a single hotel staff member leaked a candid photo of Meghan entering or leaving. There were carefully posed pictures, but nothing spontaneous, nothing raw. Everything was orchestrated. Then came the birth announcement, or, rather, the lack of it. On May 6, 2019, the world was told that Meghan had given birth to a healthy baby boy named Archie Harrison Mountbatten, Windsor. But curiously, the timeline of that announcement was fuzzy. The media were first told that Meghan had gone into labor that morning. Later, it was revealed that Archie had actually been born hours earlier, possibly even the night before. News crews were caught off guard. There was confusion about the birth location. Some reports claimed Meghan had been rushed to London's Portland Hospital, while others insisted she had given birth at home in Frogmore Cottage. No ambulance was ever photographed. No hospital staff confirmed her presence. Just 2 days after Archie's birth, Meghan and Harry staged a brief press appearance inside Windsor Castle. They walked out holding Archie, who was wrapped in a white blanket, his face largely obscured. Meghan wore a white dress, smiling but looking strangely composed for someone who had given birth barely 48 hours earlier. Experienced mothers commented on how quickly she had regained her posture, her poise. Her abdomen appeared remarkably flat for someone recovering from childbirth. Her steps were precise. No signs of swelling, fatigue, or discomfort. There was no press Q&A. No access to the attending physicians. No public hospital confirmation. It all felt rehearsed. As the weeks passed, things only became stranger. The couple refused to release Archie's birth certificate for weeks, finally doing so only after pressure from the media. When it did surface, the certificate listed Prince Harry's occupation as Prince of the United Kingdom, but under Meghan's details, she was labeled simply as Rachel Meghan Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. At first glance, it seemed normal, except for the inconsistencies with hospital name and attending physician. The place of birth listed Portland Hospital, yet staff from the maternity wing stated off-record they had no recollection of any high-security event taking place around the birth date. The birth certificate also reignited speculation because of how it compared to similar documents from other royals. Kate Middleton's certificates for her children, for instance, were published promptly and included consistent information with public records. Meghan seemed delayed, modified, and filled out with ambiguous detail. Fast forward to Archie's christening in July 2019. The event was closed to the press, a stark contrast from previous royal christenings that had always welcomed at least limited media access. No extended family members from the royal side were shown holding Archie. In the released portraits, Archie's face was partially hidden, and body posture made it difficult to assess his size or developmental stage. It was impossible to tell his age. He could have been weeks old or months. Again, the media was told nothing. No confirmation of godparents, no video footage of the ceremony, no candid behind-the-scenes moments. Royal correspondents were puzzled. Some noted that even Princess Diana, known for fiercely guarding her son's privacy, had allowed greater transparency. Meghan and Harry's defenders argued this was a natural reaction to the hostile press climate. But critics began to suggest something more calculated, that Meghan's entire pregnancy may have been misrepresented, and that she had never physically given birth to Archie at all. These rumors were compounded by the handling of Lilibet Diana's birth years later. Similar patterns emerged: a birth announced post-fact, no hospital photos, no physician statements, no clear timeline. Just the same carefully managed messaging that had shrouded Archie's arrival. Now, with the leaked birth certificate lacking a biological mother, the questions that once seemed outrageous suddenly appeared plausible. Was Meghan Markle a surrogate for someone else's child? Was she a legal guardian, not a biological mother? Or was there a surrogate involved whose identity has been legally erased from the record? Legal experts note that California law permits secrecy in surrogacy agreements, especially when both parties sign a pre-birth order. These orders are sealed by the court and not available for public review. In such cases, the surrogate's name does not appear on the birth certificate. Instead, the intended parents are listed, or, in special cases, just the legal custodian. If Meghan had entered into such an agreement, she could have requested to be left off the certificate to protect legal boundaries, or to hide the surrogate's identity entirely. All of this still leaves one question uncomfortably unanswered. Why hide it? The royal family is no stranger to non-traditional arrangements. Yet if Meghan had used a surrogate, why not be transparent? Why go through the charade of public appearances with an inconsistent bump? Why orchestrate a media narrative that's now falling apart under legal scrutiny? The answer may lie in image. For Meghan, whose entrance into the royal family was already controversial, a pregnancy via surrogate might have undermined her carefully built image of maternal strength and feminist independence. For Harry, admitting the use of a surrogate might have drawn comparisons to illegitimacy, even if completely legal. And for the institution itself, such a revelation might have shaken public confidence in the authenticity of royal heirs. Now, as the story unfolds, that strategy of secrecy appears to be collapsing. The mystery of Meghan's maternity is no longer confined to YouTube speculation or fringe blogs. It is now central to a broader investigation, one that calls into question the legitimacy, legality, and transparency of everything surrounding Archie's birth. The British monarchy has always been a master of message control. Behind palace walls and gilded gates, every statement, gesture, and photo opportunity is meticulously planned to convey unity, strength, and continuity. Silence, in royal terms, is not absence. It is often a deliberate message in itself. When it comes to crisis management, especially involving scandal or rumor, the palace has traditionally relied on three tools: ignore, contain, and outlast. In the case of Archie Harrison and the mystery surrounding his birth certificate, the institution has so far leaned heavily on the first. Since the initial leak of the document that omitted Meghan Markle's name as biological mother, no official statement has been issued by Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, or Kensington Palace. Not even a palace aide has whispered a denial to the press, nor has a carefully placed quote been offered to refocus the public's attention. The silence has been deafening and telling. In past decades, the palace was quick to respond to rumors that directly touched on the monarchy's legitimacy. When questions were raised about the Queen's taxes, public funds, or Prince Andrew's behavior, carefully calibrated responses were dispatched. Even personal tragedies like Princess Diana's death or Harry and Meghan's departure from royal duties were addressed, albeit cautiously. So why the complete void now? Some insiders believe the silence signals internal conflict. According to a former senior staffer who served during the Queen's reign, a controversy like this involving the maternity of a royal child would traditionally prompt a fast and quiet investigation within the royal household. But Meghan and Harry's self-exile to California has complicated those processes. Without oversight, without cooperation, the palace may have been left in the dark like everyone else. That said, silence does not necessarily equal ignorance. Leaked correspondence from 2020 between senior aides and the Home Office suggested that questions regarding Archie's citizenship and place of birth had already been quietly raised in government circles. It was during the early stages of the Sussexes' move to the United States. According to the memo, concerns were brought up regarding the lack of documentation available for verification concerning the Sussex children. The document did not accuse the couple of wrongdoing, but it hinted at bureaucratic frustration, especially when the birth certificate failed to align with standard identification required for diplomatic processing. Still, rather than pressing the issue, the palace reportedly chose to avoid escalation. One paragraph in the memo read, "Due to the volatility of current relations with the Sussex household, a non-engagement strategy is recommended." In simple terms, do nothing, say nothing, wait for the storm to pass. But that strategy is showing signs of failure. With media coverage increasing and social platforms flooded with dissected screenshots of Archie's documentation, royal watchers and constitutional commentators are growing restless. Even loyal monarchists are beginning to question why there has been no attempt to clarify or defend the integrity of the royal line. Some point to the risk that further silence could be interpreted as complicity or worse, confirmation. Inside the palace, the family remains divided. According to multiple sources close to the royal press offices, Prince William has grown increasingly frustrated with the implications of the Sussexes' behavior. William, known for his measured composure, has reportedly voiced concern over the constitutional weight of the scandal. Though he has made no public comment, his distance from his brother in recent years has become more pronounced. The brothers are rarely seen together, and when they are, the tension is visible. Queen Camilla and King Charles, now under enormous pressure with their own legacy in question, have reportedly taken a different approach. Charles, while disappointed, is said to have advocated for non-intervention. "Let them hang themselves with their own rope," he allegedly told a staff member. Camilla, more direct and less diplomatic, is rumored to have questioned the very legitimacy of the children behind closed doors. Then there is Princess and, often the monarchy's blunt instrument. Those close to her have said she was disturbed from the start by the lack of transparency in Meghan's pregnancy. Known for her fierce protection of royal protocol, and reportedly confronted senior advisors during Archie's christening and questioned why so few family members had seen the child in person. While these sentiments swirl behind the scenes, the official line remains silence. This non-response has had ripple effects throughout the royal ecosystem. Former royal correspondents, once sympathetic to Harry and Meghan's media battles, have grown more skeptical. Some have even begun publishing think pieces about the monarchy's credibility. A well-known BBC commentator recently wrote, "A monarchy that cannot or will not defend the legitimacy of its own line is a monarchy that risks losing the confidence of its people." The public has begun to notice the silence as well. Polling data from major British outlets shows an uptick in skepticism regarding the Sussex children's status. Questions about Archie's birth and Lilibet's alleged American christening have entered public discourse. Talk radio hosts now mention it freely. Even members of parliament are beginning to murmur. There is talk, albeit cautious, of reopening a broader debate about royal succession laws and transparency. What's notable is that despite all this mounting pressure, the palace's silence is not joined by effort behind the scenes to suppress the rumors either. There has been no legal action against platforms spreading the birth certificate image. No copyright claims. No takedown requests. The lack of pushback stands in contrast to previous years when Harry and Meghan pursued aggressive litigation against media outlets for far less. This restraint, or paralysis, has many experts puzzled. One interpretation is that the palace is preserving plausible deniability. If they never confirm or deny, they are never responsible for being wrong. Another interpretation is more dire, that the palace simply does not know the full truth and fears what an investigation might uncover. There's a theory circulating among palace watchers that suggests the royal family never saw an original birth certificate themselves. Instead, they may have relied on Harry and Meghan's word, or on documents presented by their team without direct verification. If that's true, the monarchy's inaction may stem from genuine vulnerability. Another layer to consider is the broader political environment. With the monarchy under scrutiny over modern relevance, cost, and its colonial past, entering a potentially explosive scandal over lineage and deception could destabilize its already fragile support. Charles may be choosing to contain the damage by letting the issue burn out on its own. But with growing public attention and increasing demands for answers, that strategy looks more precarious by the day. What adds further complication is that the Sussexes themselves are still using their titles. Archie and Lilibet were publicly referred to by the couple as Prince and Princess in their media announcements and online statements. They've also included those titles on holiday cards and event invitations. But technically, those titles rest on legal verification of birth and lineage. If the documentation in question is false or incomplete, the entire foundation for those titles may collapse. And if the palace remains silent, it could be perceived as an endorsement of that fraud. A senior member of the House of Lords recently commented in a closed-door committee meeting that the matter should be reviewed, not for punishment, but for clarity. According to one account, he said, "The monarchy is not a brand. It is a constitutional pillar. If children are claiming titles and standing on false documentation, that becomes a legal matter, not just a public one." Yet still, the palace remains motionless. Perhaps they hope the media cycle will turn elsewhere. Perhaps they are waiting for a distraction, another royal wedding, a state visit, anything to redirect attention. But every week that passes without clarification only deepens public doubt. And in the vacuum left by silence, alternative narratives take root. What makes this silence more damaging than ever before is the current era of digital transparency. The public no longer waits for newspapers or nightly broadcasts. The rise of online citizen journalism, forums, and social media means that millions are dissecting every detail in real time with no regard for royal etiquette. Every unexplained photo, every missing signature, every conflicting statement is now permanently etched into the digital landscape. The longer the palace remains silent, the harder it will be to reassert control over the story. The monarchy has survived world wars, divorces, deaths, and betrayals. But this is a new kind of threat. It is not explosive. It is corrosive. It eats at trust, at perception, at the very idea that the institution stands above deception. And in the absence of answers, one question echoes louder than all others. If Archie's birth was legitimate, if Meghan was truly his biological mother, if the certificate was valid, why say nothing? To fully understand the extent and complexity of the Archie birth certificate controversy, one must move beyond tabloid speculation and delve into the legal framework surrounding birth registrations, guardianship, and surrogacy laws in both the United States and the United Kingdom. These are not just bureaucratic technicalities. They are the legal scaffolding upon which legitimacy, inheritance, citizenship, and custody rights are built. When that scaffolding is missing or suspiciously altered, the consequences go far beyond gossip. They touch on constitutional law, international jurisdiction, and even the moral integrity of institutions like the British monarchy. The state of California, where Meghan and Harry are believed to have established their primary residence at the time of Archie's birth, has one of the most legally permissive environments in the world for surrogacy arrangements. It is one of the few jurisdictions where gestational surrogacy is not only legal but actively facilitated through court-approved pre-birth orders. These orders allow intended parents to be listed directly on the birth certificate from the moment of birth, often without the surrogate's name ever appearing in public record. This protects the surrogate's privacy and firmly establishes the legal rights of the intended parents. In typical surrogacy cases, once a pre-birth order is granted, the hospital where the child is born will issue a birth certificate that lists the intended parents, those who contracted with the surrogate, as the legal parents. The surrogate, even though biologically involved, unless it's a gestational surrogate with no genetic link, has no parental rights and may not be listed. This system allows for privacy and is commonly used by high-profile individuals who want to shield the process from public scrutiny. However, there's a critical distinction in how this legal pathway functions. While the names of the intended parents can replace the surrogates, at least one biological parent is usually required to be listed unless both parents used donor material and waived their biological claims. And even in those rare instances, the documentation is incredibly thorough and requires court approval, notarized affidavits, medical records, and surrogate agreements filed months in advance. So what happens when that process is altered? When instead of two intended parents being listed, one name is missing entirely, replaced with a vague designation like legal guardian, private agency? This is the core issue behind the leaked document attributed to Archie's birth certificate. If Meghan Markle was the biological mother, her name should appear. If a surrogate carried the child and Meghan was the intended parent, she still could be listed. For her name to be absent entirely, another legal route must have been taken, one even more secretive, even more shielded. Legal analysts point to a narrow pathway under California law that allows for what is known as a third-party custodial assignment at birth. This is usually reserved for adoption cases where the biological parents relinquish rights before the child is born and the adoptive parents are not biologically connected. In such cases, the court may approve a birth certificate listing a guardian or custodian in place of traditional parental identifiers. These arrangements are rare, costly, and typically sealed permanently by the court. They are designed for sensitive scenarios like children born to incarcerated parents, those in witness protection, or extreme privacy cases involving international diplomacy or criminal protection statutes. If Meghan and Harry pursued this path, it would mean that Archie was not born to either of them biologically, or that their biological roles were deliberately severed by legal design. Such a move would be unprecedented in royal history and would raise serious constitutional and ethical questions. It would suggest that Archie is being raised as their child through custodial assignment, not as a natural heir by blood. That, in turn, would throw his status as a royal, his potential titles, inheritance, and even nationality into limbo. The UK's own laws further complicate matters. According to British succession rules, any child in line to the throne must be a legitimate descendant of the sovereign. Legitimacy, in this case, is tied to both birthright and documentation. British law has not formally recognized surrogacy as a method for royal succession, and there is no precedent for an adopted or surrogate-born child entering the line of inheritance. If Archie was born through surrogacy, and the UK monarchy was not formally informed through documentation verified by British authorities, his claim to any title or lineal succession could be invalid under existing constitutional principles. Further, the British Home Office requires detailed documentation for confirming citizenship for children born abroad to British citizens. This includes birth certificates listing biological parents, proof of parental status, and legal residency documents. If Meghan's name is missing, and there is no biological link to Harry, it is possible that Archie's citizenship was granted under incorrect pretenses or remains unresolved. Royal experts have raised this issue quietly for some time. A well-known constitutional scholar recently remarked during a panel discussion in London, "We are now in uncharted territory." If it is ever confirmed that Meghan was not the biological mother, or that Archie was not registered with transparent parental identification, we will be forced to reconsider the entire structure of his royal designation. The monarchy cannot afford gray areas in lineage. The public still remains largely unaware of the legal minefield these questions raise. But behind closed doors, there is growing unease. Parliament has remained silent, but a few MPs have called privately for the Privy Council to look into the legitimacy of the Sussex children's birth records. If these children are to carry royal titles and potentially represent the crown in any capacity, the public has a right to assurance that their status is legally sound. This is not about attacking parenthood or casting doubt on family love. Harry and Meghan may very well be loving and attentive parents to Archie and Lilibet, but royal titles, like citizenship and inheritance, are legal constructs. They must follow rules, and when those rules are circumvented or hidden, legitimacy collapses. It is worth noting that Meghan and Harry have repeatedly insisted on their children's birthright to titles. In interviews and press statements, they have claimed that Archie and Lilibet deserve royal styling as prince and princess because they are grandchildren of the reigning monarch. But such titles are not automatically bestowed. They are granted by royal prerogative and rely on legal confirmation of birth status. The irony is that by seeking privacy so aggressively, by shielding documentation, restricting photo access, avoiding traditional hospital disclosures, they may have inadvertently undermined their children's claim to those very titles. What's more, the choice of California as the birth location was no accident. California, with its progressive surrogacy laws and relaxed documentation requirements, offered a shield that would have been impossible in the UK. In Britain, surrogacy is legal but far more regulated, and parental transfer requires post-birth court approval. No child born under such secrecy would be permitted to claim titles without full parliamentary review and legal registration. California offered Meghan and Harry a loophole, one that, if exploited, could alter royal history. And now, the evidence suggests they may have used that loophole. The absence of Meghan's name, the presence of a legal guardian or agency, the lack of a hospital listed, the delayed release of the certificate. Each point, on its own, might be dismissed. Together, they form a mosaic of concealment. Yet none of this is illegal. That's the crucial point. Nothing Harry and Meghan may have done violates California law. What they may have done is manipulate privacy and legal processes to present a curated public narrative that fails to match the official record. In the world of Hollywood or private wealth, that's a common strategy. In the context of royalty, where lineage, bloodline, and national identity are inseparable, it is a potential disaster. As this legal puzzle continues to unfold, attention is now turning toward the role of the law firms involved. The firm listed in the redacted portion of Archie's certificate has so far refused all requests for comment. Their website lists surrogacy, family confidentiality, and cross-border custodial assignments as part of their core services. It is a boutique agency used by clients seeking absolute discretion. Former clients include tech executives, international financiers, and a handful of well-known celebrities with fertility complications. That Meghan and Harry might have worked with them suggests deliberate intent to manage every legal angle of Archie's birth from the shadows. A leaked invoice from early 2019, which was never confirmed but circulated widely among journalists, listed tens of thousands of dollars in custodial legal fees paid to the firm in the months before Archie's birth. The timing aligned with Meghan's final trimester. If authentic, it is further evidence that legal preparations were made long before the public ever learned of Archie's arrival. The issue now is no longer whether something was hidden, it is how much was hidden, and for what purpose.